uh, when he was here. And, you cannot get away from it. Everlasting joy and the finality of the separation and release of blessings that form one unit. God seals his promises by the fulfillment of what has been prophesied. And in this section, the prophet saw the future in the mirror. He saw the future in the mirror of the present. In other words, it was as if this was really happening now, the present. And it's a complete inversion, a reversal of how Israel had stood before. And in this section, Israel has the revelation of the Messiah, the Christ, and the Gentiles are involved. And remember, we are told in the New Testament, not male or female, Jew or Gentile, but one in Christ. And of course, that's going to be hard. That is hard for the Jews. Now, meanwhile, there's a lot of prophecies that yet apply to them. And a lot of stuff we're looking at of. But one of the biggest things we see with Israel is trouble and tribulation, just like they're going through now. There is so much hatred, and it's hatred also at the Christians. Make no mistake about it. Today, Christian persecution is at an all-time high. And we do our show on Christian persecution on Wednesdays. And so, they shall build the old wastes, they shall raise up the former desolations, they shall repair the waste cities and the desolations of many generations. Now, that has not happened yet. Israel being in the land and being a modern state is not the fulfillment. It's a partial fulfillment, but it's not the complete fulfillment. They don't have all the land. And they have enemies everywhere. They do not live in peace. And today, there's a bigger swath of those in, you could say, Ishmael side, where we find Islam occupying a space. And Islam is a major opponent to Christianity and to Judaism. So when we look at Isaiah, and Kyle and Delish talk about this, even when he continues to say, you will eat the riches of the Gentiles and pride yourselves in their glory. That is, be proud of the glorious things which have passed from their possession into yours. In other words, well, I'll give you an example of that today. Christians love Israel. If you're a true believer, born again, you know Israel. And you love Israel. Now, if you look at even our backing of Israel during this war that they've been in, and if you will pay attention to even the Messianic Jews that are in Israel today, like a major ministry, Mao was Israel, you're going to find out that there is a lot of influence from the Messianic side and from the Christian side on Israel. And Christians go over to Israel by the I could probably say millions here, don't you think, Tower?
Yes, probably.
And so we have a visitation of all these Christians and Messianic Jews to Israel. They're drawn to Jerusalem. But see, the biggest blessing is when all this is over with. And when we talk about rebuilding the Gentiles, I mean rebuilding Israel. That's really a blessing. And so Kyle and Delis see a lot of this language as coloring, they say intended to strike the eye, or in other words, let you to really see what is going to be happening. And try to explain to you what actually happens on the ground that Isaiah saw in the future. And when he saw the future, he saw it as the present. And it was a complete inversion or turnaround in relation to where the two, meaning the Gentiles. The Gentiles were never friendly to Israel. And there was a time when Christian Gentiles especially were enemies of Gentiles. I mean, enemy of Israel. I can tell you that Paul the Apostle, when he was going around spreading the gospel to the Gentiles, that the Jews followed him everywhere they were persecuting him at everything. They would incite Gentiles to beat him up, to go after him. They were not nice to Paul. And, they were going to destroy him in Jerusalem. And so he appealed to Caesar. And if he hadn't have been a Roman citizen, he wouldn't have been able to do that. So, there was a time when the Gentile Christianity separated itself, literally, from the Jews. And so the Jews for a long time were on their own. Of course, during this time, they weren't even in the land yet. So we're talking history here. So these verses come at the end of Isaiah for a reason. This is the look at the part of Isaiah to where, God is done judging them as far as Judah and the northern tribes being sent into captivity. All that's over with. Israel is in the land now. And many of us are talking about a third temple. And the other thing of it is, there are those who believe that Israel, and I saw this the other night, that believe that the third temple was actually built a long time ago. And I disagree with that. I believe that there is going to be, and I think Ezekiel points it out, especially when you read the temple that he has in there. But the other thing is, we base it also on what Paul has to say when he says of the son of perdition, which is the destroyer, which is the name given to the Antichrist. They're all Antichrist. Make no mistake, just to be an Antichrist, we've already got a lot of Antichrist. Antichrist means anti-Christ, anti-Messiah, anti-Yeshua, as I call him. And, the real dark one that comes, described, we see the son of perdition, and it's given to him that name because of what he does. He leads people into destruction, but yet they will be deceived as well. And so we know that he will set himself up as God in the temple of God, okay? And that's important. He doesn't set himself up in a Christian church. It has to be the temple of God. And the Jews have had temples their whole life of being organized, from Abraham's bosom. And they get into the land, and the first thing they want is a temple. It's not a synagogue. it's a temple of God. So there will be a temple of God, no matter what this guy says. And so the bottom line of it is so we're pursuing that. And so when we look at these end time verses, they're very revealing, and they talk about a lot of things. And so another thing we look at, now this is verse 4 of Isaiah 61, conversion of all Israel to Christ will be the riches of the Gentiles. Now see, you get that from Romans, and it says here in Romans 11:12, now if the fall of them be the riches of the world, and the diminishing of them be the riches of the Gentiles, now pay attention, how much more their fullness? Their fullness when they come into the knowledge of Christ, and they finally realize that the Messiah is the one that died on the cross, and he's the one that showed himself to the Jews and revealed him. He told them, they came back and asked him, tell us who you are. And he said, I did, and you believe not. And he says, I know my own know me, they will follow me. And he says, you don't know me, you don't follow me. So, they weren't, they were the ones that were plotting his destruction. So what's he saying? How much more their fullness, and their fullness is going to come, at a certain time when the times of the Gentiles are ended. There's going to be a time when the Jews, and you can even get into Zechariah, the last chapter, and you can see some more stuff concerning that, because that gives you a picture of the arrival of the Messiah. And of course, at the time, that's when Israel's being attacked again. But, we've seen a lot of stuff go on, even this time with Israel trying to defend itself with Hamas. And Hamas literally, absolutely had taken Gaza and made it into a military camp and covered it with civilians to fool the Jews, and it did. But there's coming a time that when Israel becomes knowledgeable of the Messiah, and you have the Gentiles that know the Messiah, and the twain become one. And that also means the inclusion of the lost tribes of Israel, because the lost tribes of Israel are going to be united with Judah. They're all going to be united. All of Israel will be Israel, and they're coming together. And of course, the Gentiles are part of that. Even in the New Testament, Paul connects the faith of Abraham to the Gentiles. So there's a lot of stuff going on here. But even if then the Gentile church should act according to the words of the same apostle in Romans 15:27, and show her gratitude to the people whose spiritual debtor she is, by ministering to them in carnal things, all that the prophet has promised here will amply be fulfilled. And in Romans 15:27 it says, it has pleased them verily, and their debtors they are, for if the Gentiles have been made partakers of their spiritual things, their duty is also to minister unto them in carnal things. And this is something that the Gentiles will do willingly. And the way the world is today, and how, especially in America, all screwed up. You're seeing a lot of this turmoil in America because of sin, because of the Gentiles that aren't saved are rejecting that totally, and they're going to. That's part of what Paul says in Thessalonians. But in the midst of all this turmoil, what comes out of it is the glorified church of Christ for the Gentiles, and a fulfilled Israel with both tribes together, both units, the northern tribes and the southern tribe, into one. And, Jerusalem is going to be common. The Christians will be in it.